So I think a lot of people's experience has been theology is boring.
For sure.
Because I think if you're reading that and you're like, this person begat this person, then this person begat this person, you're reading that like, how does this help me live my life today?
Here's why the genealogy is really important, is because in a modern world, which is the world we live in, we think that our identity comes from our gifts,
right?
Our identity comes from our personality, or that identity rests within the individual.
Right.
And I'm actually a big proponent that you don't even know who you are if you don't have a group that defines you. And the fact that we no longer use genealogies means that our society is headed towards destruction.
Family, welcome to the introductory episode of the ARMA podcast. Me and one of my best friends, Will Wilson Jr., we sit down to have raw, honest conversations. We're both Bible nerds, we're both dads, we're husbands, we're pastors. Low-key, we both wish we were comedians, but I think this podcast is going to be a value add. How about you jump into this first episode with us? Let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Wow.
We're finally here, Will. Will Wilson Jr., me and you have been talking about starting the ARMA podcast.
What you gonna say, at least 10 years?
For at least 23 years. And we're finally
here.
We are finally doing it.
I'm excited.
This is episode 1.
Season 1, episode 1.
Season 1, episode 1.
If we were a sitcom, this is what we would call the pilot.
The pilot.
This is it.
You know why they call it the pilot?
I'm assuming something's in the air.
It's the first time the show is on air.
That's right.
Yeah. The pilot means that a show is now on air.
That's right.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it's the pilot. It's the pilot episode.
Welcome to the ARMA podcast.
So here's the deal. The deal. Let me tell you what annoys me, Will. Want to know something that grinds my gears?
You want to start off slow? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, at the end of the day, let's just talk about something that really...
Let's get into it.
Is a pet peeve of mine.
Okay.
Here's a big pet peeve. When it comes to Bible podcasts.
Okay.
Like Bible podcasts.
We're making friends already.
Just Bible podcasts.
Okay.
Not Christian podcasts.
Not Christian podcasts.
No, not Christian podcasts.
Not church podcasts.
Not church podcasts.
Bible podcasts.
Bible podcasts.
Okay. What grinds your gears about Bible podcasts? I've been meaning to ask you this. What grinds your gears about Bible podcasts?
That they're all led.
Oh, man.
They're all led by people who don't look like us, Will.
I wouldn't say they're all led.
The popular ones.
But a majority of them.
The plethora of them.
They do not have diversified voices.
They are. Now, here's another pet peeve.
Okay.
Now, I'm getting my doctorate right now, Will.
I've been to the doctor.
I'm getting my doctorate.
Okay.
You know how much Christian education I've been a part of? I've been in a Christian school since kindergarten.
Man.
Okay. So I was in Christian school from kindergarten to 5th grade.
Okay.
Then I went to a Christian middle school.
Man.
A Christian high school.
What is a Christian middle school? That's an oxymoron, by the way.
Bro.
The only people who think a Christian middle school exists are parents.
It was very Christian.
Only parents.
We had Bible class.
Sure. I didn't say that wasn't happening. I'm just saying you and I both know. In middle school, Christian school.
Straight through puberty, I was in chapel service.
Amen.
Yeah.
Then you went to get your undergrad from where?
Gordon College.
Okay.
Now, let me tell you what's less Christian than a Christian middle school. A Christian college. Okay.
Yo, shout out to Gordon, yo.
Shout out to my alma mater, Gordon College.
You got your master's at?
Got my master's at Southeastern University.
Okay.
That was the most Christian educational experience I've ever had.
SU's a great school.
SU's phenomenal. And now I'm getting my doctorate at Northern Seminary. Ask me if I've ever had a black Bible teacher.
Manny, have you ever had a black Bible teacher?
I never had a black Bible professor.
Here's an interesting tension about that.
Yeah.
That I've always wanted to ask you.
Okay.
And I've never asked you this before. I have always wanted to ask you this question. I've never asked you this. Well, you and I have known each other at least 5 years.
Okay.
I've never asked you this question before.
Okay.
Talk to us about the tension of growing up and only hearing black preachers, but never having black professors.
Yeah.
And they're talking from the same text.
Yes.
Talk about that tension.
It made me believe that black people are for entertainment.
Wow.
And that white people were for intellectualism and for education. That when it comes to content,
Wow.
that when it comes to content,
Okay.
if we want to be entertained, you go hear a black voice to be entertained.
Because of the presentation style of black preaching is what I'm asking.
Well, I'm saying that because preaching is not preaching in a Pentecostal element.
Okay.
Now, preaching for our Reformed friends is education.
Sure.
But as you're going to learn throughout the duration of the seasons of this podcast, I'm going to draw a pretty distinct line between teaching and preaching.
Sure.
I'm going to say that.
I think the Bible does. There's
Yes.
5 ministries, and those are two different ministries.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So I think that by the time subconsciously,
Okay.
because do I think my pastor on a Sunday was providing educational value? Yes.
Okay.
Of course. But there's an element of preaching that should be entertaining. Preaching should be entertaining.
A lot of people who are Reformed brothers and sisters are going to log off right there.
That's fine. That's fine. They're probably not good at preaching.
I hope you stay.
That's fine. They're probably not really good at preaching. You went to go see Chris Rock to go become a better preacher, right? You recently went to go see Chris Rock because you want to become a better what? Presenter of the gospel. A better presenter of the Bible. And that's why you went to go see Chris Rock. Because you realize that anytime you're on a stage, that is entertainment.
That's presentation.
Yeah. In my bio on Instagram, it says I make theology entertaining.
Sure. I think church has made the word entertainment so dirty.
That's unfortunate.
When really all it means is the ability to hold attention.
Yep.
The ability to get and to maintain another person's attention.
Yeah.
So when you say entertainment in your context, that I make theology entertaining,
yeah,
I think a lot of people would probably agree with me. I don't feel this way because of how spiritual I am, but I think so many people might agree that theology has been very close to boring.
Most theology is very boring.
Sure.
Which is why people don't go to seminary.
I think there are a lot of people who are watching the podcast right now, and they're like, man, every year for the last 12 years, I've made the decision that I'm going to read the Bible this year from beginning to end. And they do good through them first couple books.
They crush it in January.
They do good through them first couple books. And the desire is not what wanes. Does wane mean decrease?
Yeah, wane is decrease.
I wanted to say that word.
Wax and wane.
I told you, you're getting a doctorate. I've been to a doctor, so I just want to make sure I'm saying the right stuff. What I've learned that the desire doesn't wane. What ends up happening, they get to where they start talking about the lineage. What book is that in?
There's genealogies in Genesis.
Well,
there's one in Genesis. There's a couple in Genesis.
When they start hitting that genealogy,
there's like Genesis chapter 11.
You start going like, man, you had me at Adam and Eve, like I was locked in. But when you start using the word begat, so I think a lot of people's experience has been theology is boring.
For sure.
Because I think if you're reading that and you're like, this person begat this person, then this person begat this person, you're reading that like, how does this help me live my life today?
100%.
Right? So for you to make this,
I can tell you why, though.
I know you can. But that's
you
not
want
the
me to
question.
just let's interject.
No.
Here's why. Here's why the genealogy is really important. Is because in a modern world, which is the world we live in, we think that our identity comes from our gifts.
Right.
Our identity comes from our personality, or that identity rests within the individual.
Right.
And I'm actually a big proponent that you don't even know who you are if you don't have a group that defines you.
Okay.
That without a genealogy, you are always going to be lost for identity.
Sure.
And we have gotten rid of genealogies, which means that we now define the human based on gender, based on race, based on gifts, based on profession. And I think that that is a very dangerous way to define who I am as a person. And the fact that we no longer use genealogies means that our society is headed towards destruction.
I think we don't use it socially. They definitely use it medically.
Yeah, they asked me if my dad had diabetes.
1,000%.
Medically, so that means doctors understand something that we don't understand
They have accepted a truth.
They have accepted a truth
That we're, as a society or socially, maybe trying to negotiate.
As a society, I think we have said.
Last time I went to the doctor, they asked me, do you know anything about your mother's grandfather?
For real?
And I looked at the doctor, and she's a nice lady.
Yeah.
I said, what makes you think? What about
what
me?
What leads you to believe?
What about me is giving off the energy I know anything about my great-granddaddy other than his name?
Do you know his name?
Yes.
That's more than I know about mine.
Well, I got a doctorate in my family's history.
That's dope.
Which is not a real degree, but you said you had a doctorate earlier, so I'm just trying to overcompensate. All right,
okay.
Back to my original point.
Your original point.
Theology is sometimes boring.
Yes.
You always have this. You've said this before. I've heard you even say this on stage preaching.
Okay.
That you're here to make theology entertaining.
Absolutely.
And your heart behind that is that it doesn't need to be boring, that there's something in here that's enrichment for your life.
Absolutely.
You're really just trying to hold people's attention.
And now I'm adding to it, Will.
Okay.
Not only in my experience has it been boring, it's been white.
It's been overly taught to us by white voices.
Absolutely.
And by white minds.
Yes.
A lot of what has been taught has been white minds. I even asked this question recently.
Go for it.
Okay. And during the moment of the filming of this podcast, one of my main functions at Elevation Church is I get to lead our efforts and our energy, values around diversity, equity, and inclusion as a church.
Which is incredible.
I think is incredible that our leaders, Pastor Stephen and Holly, have even created a role like this for somebody to be thinking about. And one of the things that I wanted to do, Pastor Stephen created this room called The Study.
Okay.
And he stood up and told us we're not allowed to shoot videos in there. That is not a space for meetings. That is not a space that's like extra hangout. The reason you go into this space is to read and study the Bible.
That's dope.
And so our staff is collecting all of these resources to be able to put in there.
Yes.
And I got this conviction that a lot of the names that are on the binding of the books that are resources, I'm not saying the books aren't good. I'm not saying that they're not helpful, because
the books are probably phenomenal.
They're phenomenal resources. But the truth is, I got this conviction of like, hey, are there Spanish-speaking theologians who have written
for sure
about the Bible?
Yep.
Are there Black theologians who have written about the Bible? Are there people from other parts of the world?
And can I interject?
Sure.
And not call it a subcategory of theology.
It's just theology.
It doesn't have to be liberation theology. Right. Just because a Black person wrote it.
Gospel theology.
Yeah, it's just, it's freedom theology. It's like, no, why do we have to put it in a subcategory just because it's written by people of color or voices of color?
Another one wasn't even just, and this is why I think this conversation is so helpful, because it isn't just the diversity of race. But I'm looking through there, I'm like, you mean to tell me no woman ever anywhere wrote anything?
For sure.
And I'm like, there's no way that's true. Most of how my faith has been
then we would put that in the feminist theology subcategory. The way that we demean things is by putting them in a subcategory.
No, you're right. And all of that to say, I think one of the main reasons that I got excited about this podcast, whether we do 100 seasons, whether we do 10, it doesn't matter. I think the thing that I got excited about was like, hey, not just the preaching part, but the teaching.
Absolutely.
We get to step into that space a little bit and bring some of the fun and bring some culture to that and bring some
1,000%.
One of us is a nerd sitting here.
We're both nerds.
They don't know that though. They know
we
that.
We are both nerds. Do not let Will fool you.
Wait.
There are two nerds sitting here. One nerd has some degrees. The other nerd is self-taught.
I'm like the kid who
has gone to YouTube University.
Who got kicked out of school, but he's actually really smart.
For sure.
And they don't find that out till later.
Yeah. There's these hoodies. I actually went to go buy one, and then they sold out. And the hoodie says, "I'm a genius from the hood." Or it's just like a genius from the hood.
Sure.
You know how many hood geniuses I know?
Oh my gosh. Some of the smartest people.
I'm from Boston.
Yeah, some of the smartest people.
You know how many dudes I know who they're just too cool to have a high GPA.
Not even just the intellect.
But kill it with that library card.
Absolutely. Not just the intellectual part in general, but going back to teaching the Bible. I grew up at a church. Are you ready for this 1970s church name?
Okay.
You're not, but I'm going to say it anyway. You're going to laugh harder than you're laughing right now when I say this.
Okay.
I grew up at a church just outside of Washington, D.C. in Gaithersburg, Maryland, called the Interdenominational Church of God.
Oh
my! This is I love
not non-denominational. They're like
interdenominational.
Interdenominational.
Yeah. Everybody come.
We ain't non.
We
want
everybody.
to inter. It's like when I was a youth pastor, I used to tell the kids like no interdigitating.
Yeah.
And that meant holding hands like this instead of holding hands like this. It's like don't slip in no interdigitation while we praying.
Interdenominational Church of God.
Interdenominational.
It was led
Church of
God.
God.
Not Church of God in Christ. It also was not part of the Church of God Reformation because it's interdenominational.
Wow, yeah. You know there's 2 churches of God.
Yes, I'm aware.
One in Anderson, Indiana,
Yeah.
and one based out of Cleveland, Tennessee.
I'm aware.
Shout out to both of them.
Shout out to everybody. We're interdenominational, by the way.
We're the interdenominational Bible podcast. Yeah.
But the lead pastor, the guy who's founded that church in 1974, I don't think he had. I have to go back and fact check this. He just passed away after turning 100 years old earlier this year, which was fantastic. God blessed him with a long, full life. He just did not have. I don't think he had like a high school education.
Yeah.
And the foundation of not just my faith, but my parents met at that church and their faith, but my grandmother attended that church.
Yeah.
So somebody who doesn't have a degree is from just a black community in Rockville, Maryland. 3 generations, well, really 4, because my wife and I moved back down there with our kids for a season, and my kids grew up there. 4 generations. He got to see 4 generations of my family be part of the church, a part of a church that he planted in 1974, before church planting was even a thing or cool or anything like that. And he didn't have this, like, he wasn't Manny Arango with multiple degrees. All he had was like a hunger for the Bible. And
he probably read his Bible 15 times a year, bro.
And he knew how significant it was that somebody from his community was just teaching the Bible without all of the demographic or Reformation stuff that sometimes comes along with it. That church got planted out of an exodus from the Baptist church.
Okay.
It was just like, we're going to step away from all of that. No knock to it, nothing like that.
But we're interdenominational. And y'all are very denominational.
It's a Pentecostal church.
Baptists are very
Baptist indoctrinated Pentecostal church, but interdenominational.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, very much.
If it was planted today, we'd call it hybrid church.
Yes, because it's very Baptist in its doctrine.
Yeah, which is the best of both worlds.
But a praise break will break out at and this, when I say praise break, not just like after singing. Sometimes a praise break follow prayer. That kind of Pentecostal. Y'all don't know nothing about that kind of Pentecostal church, okay? Very Baptist indoctrinated, but Pentecostal.
Yeah.
Founded and led by a man who didn't have a freaking education.
Yeah.
And 4 generations of salvation took place in my family alone.
Yeah.
And we are not unique, by the way.
For sure.
Everyone's family was like that in the neighborhood, in the town that I grew up in, and that's just what it was. But I think he understood the value that somebody who looked like him from our community, from our neighborhood, needed to be the voice for so many people. He is the greatest theologian I've ever known.
For sure. Because let's just demystify or break this myth right now.
Okay.
You don't need a bunch of degrees to do theology.
Great.
So let me say this. I'm going to steal a quote from Craig Rochelle, and I'm going to kind of bring it back.
Which is great as we're talking about diversifying the voices.
I hate you.
I freaking love Craig Rochelle.
Of course we love Craig Rochelle.
I think everything Craig Rochelle says is just brilliant.
Yeah.
Every time he talks, I'm like,
he
dang.
demystifies leadership. It's brilliant.
And it's simple, too. And I'd be mad because I didn't think of it. But go ahead, tell us your...
So here's what I feel like a lot of people have learned from Craig Rochelle. Here's what I've personally learned from listening to Craig Rochelle's leadership content. Craig Rochelle says this thing, it's freaking brilliant, that everyone has culture. Every organization has a culture.
Yes.
Every church has a culture. Okay. Culture is not something you can just opt out of. There's a culture in every family. As we were both youth pastors for a long time, we know there's a culture in every family. And most of the time, the youth pastor's fighting up against that culture of that family.
We're not fighting sin.
No.
That's the easy part.
It's the family of origin that person is from.
That's right.
Okay, so every family has a culture. Every organization has a culture. Every church has a culture.
Sure.
Craig Rochelle then says, whether the culture is by design or by default is up to you. Okay? So everything has a culture. There's going to be a culture by default.
Sure.
I'm giving you the opportunity to design it. Since there's going to be a culture, you may as well design the culture. Because we're all shapen in sin, born in iniquity,
Sure.
because of the fall, because of the depravity of humans,
Right.
that culture by default is never going to be phenomenal.
Sure.
My house is not neat and clean by default. It's neat and clean because it's intentional.
That's right.
I will say this. Now, this is where I then add my 2 cents on top of
Okay.
Reverend Dr. Craig Rochelle.
I agree with what he said. I don't know if I'm about to agree with you, but we'll see. We'll see.
Everyone,
Okay.
every church, family, organization has theology. Everyone. Whether you have theology by default
Wow.
or whether you have theology by design
Wow.
is going to be up to you.
Wow.
So I've encountered a lot of senior pastors who say things to me like, yeah, I'm just not nerdy. I'm not, you love to read. You like to do school.
I'm not a reader.
I'm not a reader.
Sure.
And I go, but here's the problem. You're still the leading theological voice for your church.
As my pastor was, as I just described growing up.
Whether or not you reading or not, you still doing theology on stage. Whether or not you studying or not, you still doing theology on stage. Whether you go to school or not, you still doing theology on stage. And so if I were you and you're already going to do theology on stage,
I would just,
I'd
throw a book in there.
You may as well design it.
Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Because we had this conversation, and I don't know if you're going to remember this, but it blew my mind. Talk to me about the pastor's study for a little bit. And
this blew my mind.
The idea behind that.
Okay. I got this from Dr. Leonard Sweet.
Okay.
Okay. Phenomenal thinker, theologian, writer, author. He's written, I think, 60 or 70 books. A part of my master's degree cohort was to take some courses by Dr. Leonard.
Okay.
And so he said that prior to the 1940s, if you go to any pastor's church, you would find that they had a study.
Yes.
Okay? Which is really cool that Elevation is introducing this idea of a study. Not a content creation space, a study. Okay? Said prior to the 1940s, AKA prior to America becoming a world superpower.
Industrial life taken off. Yeah.
Yep. So this is prior to World War II.
Yes.
Because it's World War II that kind of launched America into becoming the world superpower, replacing Great Britain, right? A pastor had a study. But after World War II, after America becomes a world superpower, the most beloved, the most esteemed, respected person in American society becomes the CEO. And pastors, after the 1940s, begin to do away with their studies, and now they have an office. So pastors, 1950s and on, have an office, not a study.
Sure.
And Leonard was actually saying that his dream would be to inspire a generation of pastors to have a studio.
Sure.
Because he's saying that we don't want to go back. Sometimes the enemy can get us into this trap that makes us idolize the past.
That's right.
Okay? So he's saying we don't need to idolize the past, but we do need to learn from history. Right. And that a studio is a place where you may have sermons that are still in process, but you're able to stream from your study.
Right.
So it's taking the study and hooking that study up to the streaming platforms where people are formulating their ideas and their faith and going, through spiritual formation.
Right.
And my dream is that this podcast would actually be the proof that I heard Dr. Leonard Sweet.
Wow.
And that I put that into practice.
Wow.
Because I want this, Will, to be a space where me and you bring sermon ideas, bring concepts, and I want this to be our studio.
And that's not unique to this podcast. I think since we've known each other, our first messages exchanged on Instagram.
Oh my gosh.
Were about a sermon I had preached.
Yes.
And
we're both. So here's what people can expect out of this podcast. Okay. Here's the 3 things that me and you talk about naturally all the time.
Yes.
And I think for the first time now, we're just going to make our conversations public, right?
And we talk about them for a long time. When we get on the phone, both of our wives are like, come and kiss us and like, good night.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to try.
I call you when I'm on road trips. You know what I'm saying? The 3 topics that me and you always talk about that I want this podcast to focus on is number 1, the Bible and theology.
That's great.
Me and you are both Bible nerds. And the reason that I was adamant to do this podcast with you, because I do want people to value education.
Absolutely.
I value formal education.
Absolutely.
But I don't want anyone to think that you have to go through formal education to be a Bible nerd.
Right.
So Bible and theology. We're always going to talk about the Bible. We're always going to talk about theology, because I do believe that we need more diverse voices in this space, in the Bible and theology space.
I agree.
Number 2, if you're going to be a phenomenal pastor, obviously it can't just be Bible and theology. You have to understand leadership.
You got to lead.
You have to lead well.
You have to lead well.
You have to know how to grow things.
That's right.
You have to know how to like recruit teams.
That's right.
And create culture and cast vision.
That's great.
And raise funds and do all and problem solve.
That's right.
Do all of the things that good leaders know how to do.
That's right.
I'm never going to advocate for a pastor to just be a nerd.
Right.
If you're going to be a triple threat, then you have to be a Bible nerd and a theology nerd, but then you have to be a leader.
Great.
And then third,
and
I would say you have to freaking preach.
please preach well.
Preach well.
Please preach well.
Like at the foundation of this
Yes.
should be good preaching. And
Yes.
I think that pastors for millennials and Gen Z, I think going forward, I think that the triple threat is going to be theology and Bible, leadership acumen, and an ability to get on stage and preach well.
That's great.
And the reason that leadership is important is because a part of leadership is integrity.
Yes.
And we need you to be good. We need you to be a good preacher, but then we need you to get off stage and be a good leader.
That's great.
And lead yourself well.
That's great.
And lead your life well.
Yeah.
So that there's no scandals
That's
that
right.
follow your ministry.
Yeah.
So
you've always been a big proponent of that. I think the most accountability you brought to my life is always when I came in today. If you did not ask me about. You knew I've been on the road recently.
Wow.
More. You didn't ask me about my job. First thing you asked me, how's your family?
wow,
First
dang.
thing we talked about today before the cameras got turned on, before the mics got set up, I was telling you about my son and what he's going through
For
right now
sure,
at school
for
and
sure.
all that. And you've always been that way. I think that's always been a pillar for you when you talk about leadership. You're not just
Absolutely.
talking about big picture, 30,000 feet,
Yeah.
but you do such a good job even in your everyday life with the integrity. And then for me, I think one of my big pillars is empathy.
Yeah.
Right? I don't need you to just be a great preacher, but I think there's a proximity that I don't think everybody has to have to you.
Yeah.
I think if you're leading a church, or a ministry or a business or an organization, you can't be friends with everybody. You can't be super close with everybody. But I do think there's this empathy that needs to take place. I'm going to talk a lot about my experience at Elevation while we shoot this podcast.
Of course.
Because it is the church that I attend.
Yeah.
And it is the place that I work.
Yeah.
I have a friend of mine, I won't say who, just because he's going to watch and I don't want to put his business out, but his dad passed away. And
Wow.
it was unexpected.
Yeah.
And it was really, really difficult time for him. Really, really difficult time. And I will never forget this. I went to see him that night, and he looks down at his phone and he goes, Pastor Stephen is calling me.
Wow.
And he missed the call. And Pastor Stephen left him a voicemail. And it was, he didn't say anything deep. He was just present with one of the guys who worked at the church.
For sure.
And
How many employees at Elevation?
400 and something.
Dang.
And he picked up the phone and called somebody.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean when I say empathy.
Yeah.
That there's a certain proximity that you should have, that no matter how well you preach, no matter how well you lead, no matter how
sure.
much of the Bible you understand, that there's still a proximity that you ought to be able to have with whatever it is that you're leading, and to be able to do that. Here's the question I want to ask you, and I think this is probably the most important question of this episode. Why, we should both answer this question. Why do we love the Bible so much? I think I've got 3 answers. Do you have 3?
Bro.
You got 3?
I have.
Can you narrow it down to 3 for me?
Of course I can.
Why do you love the Bible so much?
Or should we leave it on a cliffhanger and do that in the next episode?
Oh, we could.
Here we go, everybody.
Episode 1?
Yo, I mean, I think if anybody wants to know what you're going to get out of this podcast from me and Will,
Sure.
you're going to get a whole lot of Bible and theology.
That's it.
You're going to learn how to be a better preacher.
Yes. And a better leader.
And Will is going to teach you how to get a job at Elevation Church. He's going to help you to become such a good leader that, because the chances of somebody watching or listening to this podcast and having applied for a job at Elevation and not getting it are pretty high.
I was that person for a while. So
There's a lot of people who apply.
Sure.
Do you know the number, Will? Average amount of applicants you guys get for every job you're posting?
I do know the number. I won't say.
Okay. So mad people. So the goal of this podcast is for Manny to teach some theology, for Will to help you to get hired, to be the kind of leader who could even get hired.
Publicly, that's not what's going to happen
at Elevation Church, and the both of us are going to teach what we know about preaching, because Will is one of the most brilliant communicators.
Stop.
That I personally know.
Oh my goodness.
Absolutely brilliant. Will, you're a brilliant communicator. You can do. You're the triple threat of communicating.
My goodness.
You're actually good at talking. Okay? So here's what you need if you're going to be the killer communicator, okay? You need to talk well.
You need to talk well, which is my least favorite compliment.
But it's true.
You speak so well.
Hey, man.
And people always mean it it comes from a genuine place.
For sure. But it can also be a microaggression if the wrong person says it.
Yeah.
You know?
But I understand what you're saying.
I'm not saying you so articulate. That's not what I'm saying.
I know.
I'm just saying you talk well.
Okay.
Number 2, you can sing.
I do. I can hold a note.
Which is unfair. How many instruments you play, Will?
I hate this so much.
How many instruments you play, bro?
I don't know.
How many instruments do you play, Will?
13.
13 instruments, ladies and gentlemen. So Will can sing. Mm-hmm. So he can get up on stage. It doesn't matter what happened on stage before him. He can get up and sing.
It is
and make it okay.
I'll be honest. I won't say any churches because I want them to call me back and book me again. But it is an unfair advantage.
Of course, it's an unfair advantage.
That if I go and the atmosphere is not where I think the Lord wants it to be, that I can get on stage.
Number 1, you can freaking talk, which I just mean like teach the Bible, preach the Bible. You know, you can talk well. Number 2, you can sing. Number 3, you can make people laugh. And to me, I go, yo, if you're funny and you can sing and you can talk, oh, dude, that's just unfair. That is unfair.
Humbled.
So 3 things you're going to get out of this podcast. Some episodes may focus on one.
Sure.
Some episodes may focus on others. But the one thing that you're going to get out of this podcast is I'm probably going to say something controversial.
And I'm going to do my best to just clean it up. Because I want us to have endorsements, invitations, merch, longevity, friends, jobs. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, gosh.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This is great.
I'm very grateful. I partnered with the right person.
Here's what I don't want to have happen.
What?
Because we're talking a lot about me and Elevation Church. You're part of Social Dallas.
Yeah, I'm a part of a phenomenal church.
With Pastor Robert Madu.
The best preacher
who, if we're gonna
on the planet.
If we're going to call Pastor Stephen a great theologian, preacher, and leader, then Robert Madu
fits all of those.
All 3 of those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here's what I don't want us to do. Say something, and when I say us, I mean you. I don't want you to say something where somebody who has Pastor Stephen and Pastor Robert's phone number puts them in a group chat and just sends them the link.
Okay, I can do that.
And says,
I can think about that.
Here's the text that I don't want them to get. Is this y'all's boys? Because I got to be out at that point. You know what I'm saying?
That would be the last season with Will.
You be sitting here with somebody else in this seat.
So, everyone on the podcast, if I'm ever sitting here with
You already know what happened. I'm telling you on episode 1, if there's anybody else here and it's not a special guest, you know what happened. You know
so
what
you're here till death or till Manny gets us canceled?
Until Manny gets us canceled.
Okay.
That's fair. I will go on a campaign tour around this country and throw you under the bus. I'll get on stage. I say, I don't know what he was thinking.
We know where your loyalties lie,
I don't
Will.
know where he was. What
I don't know what I wasn't even in that episode.
I didn't go.
Will, there's video of you sitting next to him. No, that's not me.
No.
That wasn't me.
No.
All right. You're going to get theology and Bible.
Get it.
Number 2, you're going to get leadership.
Yep.
I was just at multiple churches in the past week where former volunteers of mine, volunteers that I led as a youth pastor, have full-time jobs now at phenomenal organizations.
Sure. Can we tell the Courtney story?
Absolutely, we can tell the Courtney story.
That anytime I have the opportunity to travel to do really anything, I was gonna try to simplify it, to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
The person who behind the scenes is probably the best support I've ever had in my life, the busiest season of my life. Does a good job, not just supporting me, but supports my wife as well.
Yeah.
She's gonna hate that we're doing this because she's the most like behind the scenes, laid back person ever.
For sure.
It's Courtney Arrington.
Courtney Arrington.
Courtney Arrington. Anybody who has ever invited me to come to their church,
Yeah.
you've had to deal with Courtney Arrington.
For sure.
Which is a blessing. Courtney Arrington is the best project manager I have ever had.
Yep.
She was one of your volunteers.
She was one of my volunteers.
Yeah.
Yes, she was.
So we'll get Bible. They're going to get preaching.
Leadership.
But leadership is also something that they're going to get.
And we are going to talk about some preaching.
That's it.
Help people.
Yeah.
Doctor up these sermons.
We'll do our best. This is episode 1.
Episode 1. Season 1. Episode 1.
The ARMA podcast.
I hope that you know a little bit more about me and Will. Hope you're bought in. I think it's going to be amazing.
Can't wait to see y'all.
All right. Thanks.
Welcome to the family. You are stuck with us now. I hope that you enjoyed that introductory episode. How about you just watch episode 1, like right now? Just go ahead, watch the next episode. I hope that you go on this journey with us. I hope that you fall deeper in love with your Bible. In 2020, we launched a digital streaming-based service called ARMA. In order to find more information, you can go to armacourses.com and you can become a monthly subscriber. Obviously, that'll help this podcast and that will help you to understand the Bible better and to understand theology. We can't wait for you to be on this journey with us. Till next time, peace.